The next Tempest Trials is here, and it's to go along with this year's Spring banner. The rewards for this Tempest, called to Defy the Gods, features the standard 42 orbs, 11,000 feathers, and 80 sacred coins. You can earn all of these if you get 50,000 points by the end of the event. For the blessing this time, you can earn a fire blessing, assumingly to go along with Legendary Roy from last month. The 3 sacred seals include HP and Speed 2, Warding Stance, and Speed and Resistance Bond. Our reward unit this time is Spring Loki, and you can earn a 4-star and 5-star copy. Let's talk a little bit about our new sacred seals and then how Loki stacks up as a free unit. We have a nice selection of seals this time. HP and Speed 2 grants a flat plus 4 HP and plus 2 speed. Nothing fancy here, but HP boosting skills are useful for certain units and builds. For example, Aversi's unique tome is devastating but requires her to have more HP than her enemies. She actually has HP and Speed 2 as an A skill, and being able to stack 2 of them is fantastic. Another good choice is Marissa, who is our free unit with Infantry Pulse, another skill that only works if Marissa has more HP than her allies. It's pretty common to use HP plus 5 skills on these type of units and builds, but I would say sacrificing 1 HP for 2 speed is totally worth it. I'll definitely be upgrading this seal for my own Aversa. Next we have Warding Stance 3. If a foe initiates combat, grants plus 6 resistance during combat. Stance skills are purely for enemy phase units, and unlike closer distant defense, it can work against both melee dragons and ranged mages or staff users. However, most tanks generally only care about fighting only melee or ranged threats, so that's why close and distant defense are such good skills. It's an okay defensive ability and works fine if a unit is alone by themselves, but Warding Stance probably won't be high on many people's upgrade list. Last, we have Speed and Resistance Bond. If your unit is adjacent to any ally, grants plus 5 speed and resistance, so this is a good opportunity to discuss bond skills versus stance skills. Generally, stance skills will be used for baiting in enemies, and usually a tank will have teammates nearby. In the same scenario, you could have easily activated a bond skill. In this case, you lose 1 resistance but gain plus 5 speed, which is incredibly valuable for defensive units who have decent speed stats. That's the main argument as to why most people will say bond skills are just better than stance skills generally. Bond skills can also work on the player phase, potentially, although stance skills have the advantage of working when a unit is alone. For the most part, I would say upgrade Speed and Res Bond over Warding Stance, but it's up to you. It's a great seal that offers tons of stat points. On to our reward unit. This time we have Spring Loki. I'm surprised she's not a banner unit, but hey, I'm not complaining. Loki is going to be another really good pickup solely for the fact that she has a colorless flying archer. We only had 2 of these in the game, plus 1 green flying archer, so this is a really rare class type. For stats, Loki has 39 HP, 31 attack, 34 speed, 27 defense, and 25 resistance. 31 attack is okay, and 34 speed is also not bad. In terms of offense, she won't be insane, but it's definitely usable, especially for a free unit. As for defenses, 39 HP, 27 defense, and 25 resistance may not look like anything special, but for flying archers, it's actually quite unique. Everyone else has somewhat low defense and res, with only Archer Hinoka beating Loki by plus 4 resistance. However, Loki also has 10 more defense than Hinoka, so yeah, she fills an odd void. Defensive archers aren't very common, but can work. However, I'm not a huge fan of defensive flyers. That's because if you want to tank ranged enemies, you have to deal with archers, and with flyers' innate weakness to bows, it just doesn't seem worth it to build unless you sacrifice a skill slot for Io's shield. Loki can maybe get away with it, and she is going to be your best bet for tackling physical or magical damage. For Loki's weapon, she has the Beguiling Bow. This is an inherent bow with 12 might and has the same effect as Spring Marissa's Flashing Carrot Lance. If the enemy is at full HP, Loki gets plus 2 to all stats during combat. Like I said for the Flashing Carrot, these aren't groundbreaking weapons, but they do have some value since you fight full HP targets very often. Since Loki can fly over terrain and is ranged, she can easily start off fights, and that will get that small stat boost. You should be able to refine this weapon, and I'd recommend getting the extra speed or maybe just some extra resistance if you are going for a defensive build. For Loki's other skills, she has Lunancers Special, perfectly fine and works against pretty much anyone. Her B skill is Flyer Formation, which allows Loki to move to any adjacent space next to a flyer ally within 2 spaces. Ideally, since she is ranged and can move over terrain, it allows Loki to make some crazy initiations depending on where the rest of her team is. It's available at 4 stars, but honestly I prefer Flyer Formation as a sacred seal since there are just way too many other good B skills. For Loki's C skill, she has Gold Flyers, not as exciting as Hot Springs Camilla's Free Hone Flyers, but it's still a fine skill. It grants all flyers within 2 spaces, plus 4 tech and speed. For any long time player, you probably have gotten a bunch of 3 to 4 star Palas, so Gold Flyers wasn't very hard to find. In terms of skill inheriting, Loki doesn't have anything super enticing other than maybe her bow. For builds, you obviously want to give her an A skill, and it would depend on if you're taking Loki into an offensive or defensive role. For offense, you want to boost her attack and speed. The beguiling bow is fine, especially with desperation builds, but it's very hard to compete with the brave bow or fire sweep bows. If you're going for mixed defenses, you have the option to run the guard bow, which grants +6 defense and resistance against ranged enemies when defending. However, you have to either accept still taking massive damage from archers or run IO shield in either the A slot or Sacred Seal slot. Since the guard bow is granting stats, Loki may be able to get away with running IO shield with something like a Bond A skill, but even then she might need some defense or res buffs to not take decent damage. If I'm being honest though, most of my flyer teams struggle with dealing with mages or daggers simply because most are melee units. I think adding a somewhat defensive range flyer like Spring Loki with a guard bow build might be something I try out. If anything, she can easily pivot to a more offensive role too. Now, I've been enjoying looking at what happens when you give our free reward units a +1 merge. Neutral nature units get a spread out stat boost instead of fixing their bane stat, and Loki is another unit who benefits a lot just from one merge. Her normal +1 merge stat boost is just +1 HP and +1 speed. However, the neutral nature will add another +1 HP, +1 speed, and then +1 resistance. +2 speed is amazing value, especially for a decently fast unit like Loki. Bringing her up to 36 speed benefits any build she runs, plus the extra HP and resistance gives a little extra defensive bulk. Spring Loki may actually be a decent merge project for heroic rails, but if you aren't looking to go all out, just giving her that +1 merge is a nice boost. She also doesn't have any huge must-have skills for inheriting, so honestly, merge away. That's all I have to talk about for this Tempest Trials. In summary, I would say HP and Speed 2 is a good upgrade if you like HP skills, and a must-have if you have a Versa. Wording stance can be useful, but as we talked about, it can easily be supplemented with Speed and Resistance Bond if you end up using it to bait on the enemy phase. Personally, I think the Bond skills are absolutely worth upgrading because they provide so many stat points and they work great as Sacred Seals since the A slot has so many strong build-defining skills. As for Spring Loki, she is a fantastic reward unit, slightly behind Archer Hinata in offense and bulkier than Summer Takumi, puts her in an odd middle ground spot. However, since many players may not even have any flying archers, Loki will be very valuable. Range flyers are not easy to come by, and for newer players, getting a free one is a really nice reward. Loki will require some skill inheriting to fully spec into offense or defense, but there's a lot of options out there. If you have any intention of running a defensive flying archer, I think Loki is your best chance at success. Coming from a very rare class typing and being versatile makes her a great unit to grab. Overall, this is a nice Tempest Trials, good set of Sacred Seals, a nice reward unit, plus more orbs and feathers makes for some nice incentive. Let me know your thoughts on our new Sacred Seals or Spring Loki in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video.